am unequivocal in my support for women who step forward with allegations of this nature. I haven't yet had the opportunity to speak directly with Kent. I will in the coming hours, and we will have more to say before the plane lifts off tonight.
The Prime Minister's closing press conference in Davos, Switzerland, a hint of what was to come. Accusations of inappropriate sexual remarks against Minister Kent Hehr posted on social media Thursday morning, and by the end of the day, he had resigned from cabinet. Lawyers had been hired to investigate a series of tweets from a former employee who wrote, quote, Hehr made verbally sexually suggested comments to all of us. In an elevator with me and only me, he said, "You're yummy." Hehr issued his own statement after his resignation, saying, I encourage all women who have felt uncomfortable, who have experienced harassment of any kind, to continue to come forward. It is never okay. Throughout my career, I've always tried to conduct myself with respect towards others. How did this all lead to his sudden resignation? Joining me to find out that and lots more is the Minister of Labour and the former Minister for the Status of Women, Patty Hajdu. Minister, good to have you on the program. Were you surprised that Kent Hehr resigned?
You know, I can't comment on his decision to resign, but what I can say is that the Prime Minister has been very clear that we take all allegations of harassment and sexual violence seriously, and as he's mentioned, he will be pursuing an investigation into the matter. The allegations came out, and the very same day the Prime Minister had a conversation with the Minister, and the Minister resigned from Cabinet. I'm not privy to the content of that conversation, but what I do know is that the Prime Minister has been very clear with all members of caucus that he will not tolerate harassment and sexual violence in any way in our party, and so he's been very clear that he'll take all those allegations seriously. When allegations come forward, there is a due process, an investigation will happen, and again, this all happened in the course of one day. So
right, well, that's why people are concerned about the due process. When can we expect the review of Mr. Hehr's conduct to be completed?
You know, as I said, Evan, I'm not privy to the timeline of the investigation. I mean, this is something that will happen, you know, through the Prime Minister's office, and as I said, the Prime Minister has said that this is it's, you know, we take all allegations seriously. This is in no way something that we would not want to investigate, and so he's taking appropriate actions.
And Minister, you talked to a lot of staffers. I mean, here we are in the wake of what happened to Patrick Brown, the leader of the Progressive Conservatives, who's now resigned. Kent Hehr, your own former minister, he's now resigned. The former PC leader in Nova Scotia. You talk to staffers. How rife is this stuff? Like, how common are you hearing about sexual harassment and abuse on Parliament Hill?
You know, I talk to many political staffers, many of them who are young. All of that work is precarious, as you know. Most of them, you know, oftentimes in their first job experience, you know, attending MPs and other parliamentarians in irregular work hours, in irregular spaces. And I heard many stories of, you know, a whisper network where women tell each other about which people to avoid and which people you know, to avoid, particularly in enclosed spaces or when there's alcohol involved. I talk to staffers about how hard it is to come forward. And so, you know, this is something that occurs, especially in sectors like ours where there is high power differentials, people with a lot of power, and conversely served by people with very little power. So it is an environment ripe for harassment. All
right, I think there's going to be lots more to come on that. Let me move to a different story that you've been in the hot seat on quite a bit, which is the summer jobs grant issue. Now, this is the government gives money to organizations to hire basically summer students. But the organizations basically have to tick off a box, what's called an attestation, that the mandate of their group, their core mandate, means that their primary activities respect the rights of women, obviously including their reproductive rights. The problem is a lot of faith-based organizations are saying to you they're upset that they believe that you're asking them to actually tick off a box to get money that actually betrays their fundamental beliefs about reproduction, and they have the freedom of religion. What are you telling those organizations now? Sorry, no money for you unless you fall in line with what the government believes?
What you've nailed it on the head. The purpose of the Canada Summer Jobs Grant is to provide good quality jobs for kids. At the end of the day, this is about making sure that kids have often that first-time experience in a job for a not-for-profit organization or small business that will help them get those soft skills that employers are looking for. And we had many concerns last year that some of those jobs were for organizations, and the youth were being utilized in ways that that work to undermine Canadians' rights. Some of the vivid examples, for example, are organizations that were anti-choice, that were using youth in a way that was not declared on their job on the grant application, to create materials that were featuring, pictures of aborted fetuses, and then asking young people to distribute those pamphlets and flyers to women that were entering clinics or around schools, and really about
but hang on,
using
and
youth
I
in a way
understand that. But you and I both know that since then, faith organizations have said, Minister, we'll use this money for other things that will have nothing to do with that. But you still want us to tick off this attestation that says our core mandate falls in line with the government's view on reproductive issues. Now, their concern is that you're infringing on their religious freedom, and it is a slippery slope that once they have to tick off that box, what's going to happen to Catholic schools? Right? They get funding. They have different places. How do you square the circle?
First of all, we're asking about activities. That's what a core mandate is. It's about what are the core activities of the organization and what is the job description of the student. There's nothing in there that talks to beliefs or values. Organizations are free to perpetuate the beliefs and values that they hold dear. We know that faith groups have a variety of different beliefs and values. They exist in this country. They add a tremendous amount of value to the fabric of our communities in many ways, large and small. This is not about beliefs and values. This is about jobs for kids, what the core activities of the organization
I know you say that, sorry.
and the job description for the young person.
With all due respect,
and it's about making sure those kids are not being used in a way that is actively undermining the rights of Canadians.
Minister, with all due respect, I know you say it's not about that, but the Canadian Conference of Catholic Bishops, I can read a dozen of them, despite your statement, they say the attestation and the examples still amount to, and I'm quoting, government coercion on matters of conscience and religious belief. They foreclose the possibility of wide-ranging views and even healthy disagreement. The attestation, the box they tick, is unacceptable. Will you change it?
The attestation stands as it is. The attestation asks organizations, as I said, to affirm that their core activities and the job description for that youth will not work to undermine the rights that Canadians have fought long and hard to win, including the woman's right to have control over her own body.
All right, even after that change, obviously some faith groups still wondering about this. Minister Hajdu, great to have you on the program today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Evan.